All right, we are live. Silver Doctors live on air. Excited to be back behind the wheels, helping steer this ship. So with that being the case, Mr. Half Dollar, how you doing? By the way, my name is Mike. For those that don't know me, my name is Mike. Better half, Mr. Half Dollar. How you doing, Mr. Half Dollar?
Doing good today, Mike. I guess the real question is, how are you doing? It looks like you made it back to the States safe and sound, and you don't have, any appearances of having come down with the Wuhan coronavirus. So we'd like to hear about how your travels went coming back.
Well, thanks for that, and I definitely feel better. I feel refreshed and revitalized a little bit. Got out the snow and the cold weather, went down, got some sunshine. So it was a great experience. I had a great experience, learned a lot, and got a chance to see life from a different perspective, more importantly, and seeing the impacts of an economy that has crumbled and has left millions of people in dire straits right now. So seeing the Venezuelan people bombarding the streets of Medellin was just unbelievable. Saw some things that I would never want to see, as far as a parent washing their baby on the side of the street with a bottle of water, and seeing people like begging for food. And just so I got a firsthand look at the side effects of being in a bordering country to a country that's having economic crisis. So learned a lot, got a chance to get some good video footage. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, because I can go on and on, but let's get to primary subject matter. So before we move on, let me make sure everyone can hear me. And so for those that are tuning in, appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. Let us know in the chat via thumbs up if the audio is good on both sides, so we can begin this live stream today. So quick thumbs up from whoever's watching, and we'll be getting rolling. We got Amy Lynn with a couple thoughts there. We'll get to those. Low blood pressure, Peter Pun, Jason, Dave, B13, B13SR, Grinch, and okay, we got a couple people tuning in. So thumbs up there. So that sounds good to me. So let's begin, Mr. Half Dollar. What's on your mind? What do you want to touch off with first? And let's take it there.
Well, the first thing isn't really a topic, but just more of a simple question. But did you experience any upgraded questioning or screening on your way back into the States yesterday?
I did not at all, and I have a lot of questions that come from that, and it looks like there's a little bit of a lag on my end, I think. But I did not see anything that led me to. I did not see anything that led me to believe that there's anything happening down in the Fort Lauderdale area coming back into the country. It was smooth sailing, apart from the TSA workers being rude and kind of like bossy, telling people what to do, as if we're not human, which led me to question a lot of things. That's another subject, but nothing out of the ordinary. That's not typical. So you wouldn't have known at that point from what I saw.
Interesting, very interesting, because so far it's going to be talking about how it's confined to just coming from Wuhan. So Wuhan is a city, and I can't remember the name of the state, but they call them provinces. So there's 11 million people in this city, right?
Yeah.
So basically it's limited to people coming from Wuhan into some areas, but the CDC is about to give another update at 11:30, so we'll have the very latest on that too. But let's just kind of start with that, right? Because what this means is that, I talk about this often, and what I'm thinking right now is that the fundamentals are starting to come back into these markets, and the fundamentals are starting to matter again. And there's two particular fundamental issues that are having an effect on the markets right now, in my opinion, and that's this Wuhan coronavirus, and that's also the Middle East, and we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I was writing about this morning is that, I think that the government and the Fed here have kind of like backed themselves into a corner, and they're kind of stuck. Because also this week is the Fed's 2-day FOMC with a press conference by Jerome Powell at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. Here's why I say that the government and the Fed have walked themselves into a corner. And this is just for reference more than anything, but here's the last press release from the CDC. Now, they're going to be updating this at 11:30 in a little bit here, and they'll have the transcript shortly after, and we'll post that at Silver Doctors. But, as of yesterday, the CDC continues to believe the immediate risk to the U.S. general public is low.
Yeah.
It's low at this time. So, that's my point about this. They've backed themselves into a corner. The government is downplaying this, right? Yeah. The other day in Davos, President Trump said, well, we're on it. We're on top of it. We got everything under control. Just this morning, he tweeted out again, if China needs any help, we've got some great experts that would love to help out. But the point is, Even the World Health Organization is downplaying this. The last statement from the World Health Organization was last Thursday. Mike, the death toll is shooting up. There's been like anecdotal reports saying, no, there's not just a couple thousands of people, but like tens of thousands of people that are actually infected with this. People are saying that the quarantine was only through railways and airlines. So people were getting out through the roads and this and that. So, and now there's 5 cases in the United States throughout 4 different states. That might be updated here in a little bit. But the point is, they're downplaying this, right? So now they're kind of like stuck because that makes the Fed stuck. Why does that make the Fed stuck? Because, and I wrote about this morning, that people are going to say, well, if there's the risk of a global pandemic, then the Fed might cut interest rates on Wednesday as a preventative sort of like pandemic insurance rate cut. But here's the thing. I don't think that the Fed can do it because our own government is downplaying the situation, saying it's a very low risk, right? So the Fed has to be on the same script. So the best we're going to get is, from Jerome Powell is, well, we're going to monitor the situation, and we currently don't feel that there's any risk to our dual mandate or our symmetrical 2% inflation objective. But my point is this, right? Stock market puked at the open today. We're down 413 points right now on the Dow. The markets are not taken to this kindly. The markets are already thinking that not only is the Fed going to hold, but there's even a slight probability for a rate increase. So I'm just rambling and going around in circles there, but there's a whole lot to dissect with all this. So I'm just going to stop and get your initial thoughts on where you would like to take this topic.
So I don't mind definitely just commenting, chiming in on it briefly. And also we got to check in with the chat, make sure, we're covering their thoughts. And so as always, if you got questions or thoughts about this particular subject at Silver Doctors, or give us a call, phone line should be open. But it's very interesting. And so apart from not having really been able to dive deep into the Wuhan situation, because I looked at a map not long ago and it looks like the primary regions, pardon me if I'm wrong, could be wrong, but looks like they're G7 nations as of now with the most reported cases or whatever. So the real question is, and if there's a lot of speculation as to whether this is a biochemical weapon, whether this is all just overstated hype. And so I listened to a couple commentators talk about the subject matter, and the severity would be even greater if there was more lives being impacted. So, of course, any life lost is a tragedy, but yet the numbers do not justify how maybe possibly outblown, how they're overblowing this situation, overhyping this situation as being like a real, true international global pandemic type of situation. And so, once again, is it a scare tactic out by the world organizations to try to bring some type of government cooperation together for further growth of government and everything else? So I question it. But once again, the mainstream narrative is we have a great economy. So as long as Trump is tweeting every 2 days, the stock market, now he can't tweet today, I'm sure, but the stock market economy is great. Then will he look to say the Fed should have been cutting rates a long time ago? We wouldn't have this problem. We would be at 3, 4, 5% GDP. So we'll see where President Trump's Twitter account takes us, because I can definitely anticipate between now and Wednesday, there's no overblown hype on the disease or the situation here, really. So expect Trump to get out there and share his thoughts on what he hopes happens Wednesday.
Yeah, those are good points. Those are all great points. And, it's interesting because, the way that this is going down is kind of like, the markets here, I'm talking about the stock market in particular, they're priced for absolute perfection, right? Yeah. I mean, PE ratios are through the roof, price to earnings is through the roof. These are priced for absolute perfection in the global economy. So, if it is a big deal and this Wuhan coronavirus is a big deal, then the markets are not prepared for this, because what does this mean on a global scale? Well, we're already seeing reports that Disneyland and Shanghai was shut down as of Saturday. Now there's reports coming out that Samsung and Foxconn and other major factories in China are closing down. The bottom line is this is going to, and there's ghost towns, we talk about the ghost cities, but now the cities that are actually populated in China are turning into ghost towns because people aren't going onto the streets. Yeah. So the point is that this coronavirus has the potential to bring upon the slowdown and have, detrimental effects to businesses, because if profits take a hit, well, the stocks are already way overvalued as it is. Yeah. So, this could be one of those things that triggers the decline in the stock market here, just naturally speaking. And then, any thoughts on that?
And then, if the markets are impacted significantly by this, then what type of response can we expect? There has to be some type of increase or pump like it typically is when there's some type of situation with the market. So as like I think Robert Kirby liked to mention, the plunge protection team gets involved or whoever's driving up this. So we'll see how it plays out.
We are. And my point about this overall is just that since the CDC has downplayed it, right? If the Fed cuts in anticipation of this, then that's basically a vote of no confidence for the CDC, right? So this is quite the pickle that the markets are finding themselves in this week. And the coronavirus is only one of the fundamental aspects of it. We're going to get into the Middle East in a little bit here, but that's just one of the interesting dynamics. Very true. So, you know that they're going to ask Powell about this on Wednesday, but the only problem is that, they just basically tee it up for him and give him softball questions. So they're going to ask him some questions, but they're not going to challenge him or what the Fed is doing or anything like that. They're just going to talk about, do you think that this virus outbreak is a concern for the global economy? That'll be the type of question that we get.
Hands down. And so I expect nothing less but that. And so we'll see. But as there was a question in the chat here from Finance Freak says, any news on the U.S. flying back citizens from Wuhan? Says thousands to be brought back. Do we have quarantine space for them? So Mr. Havdalah, are you familiar with anything news-wise about returning?
Well, yeah, there have been actually several nations, and I'm just going off of memory here, but I want to say, I can't remember the nations. I want to say that the UK and the US and maybe a couple other were actually, they were moving C-130s, right? So this was actually a government evacuation. I don't know about the other nations, but as far as the United States, this is a government evacuation with military C-130 aircraft. Because remember, and also with charter planes, because, the transportation in and out was locked down, but obviously the government in an evacuation is going to be able to move those people. But, right now there's been no general update about this as far as the seriousness and quarantine and all this and all that. But it's interesting because there's also the first case in Canada now. And now the wife of that person is also diagnosed positive. So this thing, and if you I don't know if you watched Chris Martinson's videos about this, but he did a couple great videos. But he was talking about this thing, in the Western media, they're hyping up. Yes, I agree with that. But on the other hand, the way that he breaks it down scientifically, this thing, he's actually calling it a pandemic right now. He's calling it a global pandemic in his video.
So hold that thought. Looks like we might have a call. Let's see if we can get somebody on. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, guys. It's Matt from Nashville.
Matt from Nashville. How you doing, my friend? What's on your mind?
I'm doing good. Mike, this one's for you, or maybe Mr. Half-Dollar. Mr. Half-Dollar, are you aware that Mike is looking into some real estate now? I didn't know about this with this bubble you guys talk about. I'm just playing. But Mike, I was wondering, man, do you think real estate might be a play? I saw you hanging out with Mr. George Gammon.
Great question. So just for a little synopsis for those that don't know, I was in Colombia. I just got back late last night, and one of the things I mentioned about being open to opportunities. And so right now, the real estate market is an extreme bubble here in the U.S. But outside the U.S., where currencies are a lot weaker in dollar terms for us citizens, I believe there's opportunity. So that was my initial step into educating myself by seeing some real estate, connecting with a few real estate investors. And so I have a lot of possible projects coming up that I think will be of interest because, once again, at this current moment, there's not much of a bubble in prices for dollar holders outside the country. And, the safety was there. And so a lot of factors were, something of interest to me. So I'm just educating myself. So not really ready to pull any triggers, but just further educating myself because outside the problems, there's going to be more than enough opportunities if you're looking for them. So I'm trying to do that myself. So appreciate you for calling, but I'm not pumping real estate or telling you to go get real. Educate yourself. That's all I'm about. So appreciate the call. All right, Mr. Dollar. Sorry. Just keep going.
Yeah, I wanted to add something on that because I'm going to have a little bit of a different take. My wife and I were looking to buy on some property in Mexico, and there's just a couple things that I want to talk about. Yeah. First of all, I don't know how it is in Colombia and South America, but in Mexico, we found comparable land, to be actually quite expensive. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really comparable in the sense that you can get a lot of good land in the United States, fertile land and just land in general, for what seems to be, a better value than in Mexico. Yeah. And in some places, the land is outright more expensive altogether. Yeah. But that said, the other point that I wanted to make is, they are starting to look at people buying property and foreigners buying property differently, right? So that's tricky because they can change the rules and they'll change the rules. Like, remember when all this immigration stuff was such a big deal a couple years ago? It's kind of died down since then, since these caravans have stopped and all this and all that. But for a while there, Mexico was saying, wait a second, we're going to start taxing American property owners more here, and we're going to start doing these other things as a way of repatriating, so to say, for lack of a better term. So there are some risks inherent with, especially with overseas real estate.
100%. So while I was there, I learned a lot of things. I actually interviewed a couple real estate people there, so I have some videos on Everything Dollar coming up pretty soon. But it looks like there's a legislation in the works now for taxing a little bit higher rate. So I think the tax rate is a lot lower for having real estate there and just operating out of that area, especially if you're a digital nomad. It's very favorable. But anybody with more than 1.5 million in assets living there, you get a little bit of a higher tax rate or tax gains, and so they're going to tax you a little bit more, which is concerning to a lot of businessmen there now. But then because Colombia itself, when it comes to what you can do with your dollars there, you can have a much greater quality of life. The safety aspect is there. Like, police was everywhere in the region I was in. But one of my concerns moving forward is that with the influx of Venezuelans, which are going to the major metropolitan areas, Bogota, I heard, is just overcrowded. Medellin, about 12 hours away, there's still a lot of Venezuelans, and that's impacting the economy. So you got retirees coming down, you got Venezuelans coming over. The government is going to experience some little economic troubles pretty soon. Therefore, next 5-10 years, I can see it not being as enjoyable to live there as a U.S. citizen if that was the case. So, but as far as real estate, everything is in the valley in Medellin, and so I have another buddy there I met who his fiance or whatever purchased a sky-rise apartment, 700 square feet small, overlooking entire Medellin in the hills for $27,000, like plush. And so so there's high and there's low, but there's opportunity in there depending on what you want to do with it. And then to not get off the subject too far, but coming back into the U.S. and the way they treat us and the way the TSA was, I didn't feel like I was welcome home. Like, I feel like I'm a burden to my country. So I'm like, I read a little bit deeper into things. So I'm like, maybe perhaps I might really want to not come back one day, because if we're in a great economy and I'm being treated like I'm a second-tier citizen in my own country, I don't know.
Yes, I've crossed over the border many times when I lived in El Paso, hundreds of times going back and forth between Juarez and El Paso. And, I never once had a problem going into Mexico, and about 9 times out of 10, I have a problem getting back into the United States. And you're right, the way that they treat you, I mean, it's hard because you just got to bite your tongue and just take it, and it's like, my goodness, we just have totalitarian, authoritarian society that just really wants to tell you what you can and can't do to the exact moment in time. It's amazing.
Now, on another little note real quick, and coming back in and going out, I realized that the U.S. is the only country that I've been to where the extensive amount of over-the-top checks and questions, and I went into Colombia, just walked in like I felt more welcome entering that country than I did returning to my own country. Like, so are we the only country that's concerned with terrorism? Like, are we really protecting ourselves? I'm thinking, like, I've heard stories of people sneaking through all types of stuff just due to a poor checkpoint at the TSA. So anyway, that's another subject matter. So thanks for the question, but let's keep it on the Wuhan side or whatever you want to get to next. So we need to talk about the Middle East here for a second, because the Middle East is not quieting down at all. In fact, there's a lot of stuff going on just over this past weekend that is showing the potential for an escalation. And it's interesting because President Trump's been stone cold silent on this matter. But 3 different things in 3 different nations, right? One, a soldier died in Syria, right? And that was a vehicle rollover. So you can say that was an accident. And yes, that's an accident, but still is firing up the whole, why are we even there crowd. Why? That's the thing. Why?
That's point number 1. Point number 2 and point number 3, which are more serious, though, are there was a rocket attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad over the weekend. Where's news about this? I mean, everybody wants to talk about, the unfortunate Kobe Bryant situation crashing in a helicopter. Nobody's saying a word about this attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Even the DOD and CENTCOM is silent on it. That's number 2. And then number 3, the Taliban just says they shot down a U.S. military aircraft over Afghanistan. you see what I'm saying? It's like, so you've got Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, you've got these powder kegs in the Middle East that are going off right now. They're not even lit. They're literally going off. And seems like the Western media is trying their very best to keep it under wraps. But that's another thing that is adding to this kind of like fundamentals re-exerting themselves back into the market. Gold and silver gapped up last night at the open, and we're sitting at 1820 right now in silver. We're sitting at 1582 in gold, and it looks like we're ready for the next moves up here. And this is with China's markets closed all week anyway.
And they're extending. I heard they're extending the holiday break or holiday because of everything's going on, which I'm assuming will impact metals. But go ahead.
Yeah, so exactly. So this is a time where the cartel can generally strong-arm gold and silver because they're not so much worried about the Chinese markets at this time, but they're not able to. So what is that telling you? That's telling you that these are fundamental forces, and they're having a difficult time here. Yeah. So did you have anything you wanted to add about the Middle East, or just factors bearing down on the market like that aren't technical in nature but more fundamental?
Not really, other than just the same thing. I anticipate more intervention in the Middle East because we're spread out everywhere, and that's the reason why we're there, to make sure we keep things in our favor in national security interests. So, yeah, we can keep moving.
A little bit more, since we started talking on housing, it's good that you brought that up because I wanted to talk about housing a little bit, just a couple little different things. Okay. It's interesting, too, because generally speaking, in foreign nations, when you build your house, you just build your house, right? There's no building code that you have to worry about. I mean, obviously, they're starting that incrementally, little by little in some places, depending on where you are and what you're trying to build. But just generally speaking, you buy some land and you build a house on it, and that's it. It's not like that here. As a matter of fact, it seems like there's this new war on what I would call like tiny houses / off-grid living. And just last week, coming out of Michigan, this is interesting. So a county in Michigan threatens, and I'm reading, and I'll bring down the let me give you this link right here. But this is just a point that I want to make. There's a couple points about housing. County in Michigan threatens to bulldoze Amish homes in dispute, right? And what they're saying is that these homes are not built up to code. And they're saying that they've got to get these houses built up to code, or they're going to demolish these homes, right?
Yeah.
But here's the point. The government can't stand tiny homes. They can't stand off-grid living. They can't stand these kind of things. So, here's an example where they're just making it more difficult, right? And why I'm bringing this up is, it looks like they're starting this war on what I would call maybe like alternative housing, if we could just group it together. They're starting a war on alternative housing just when it's about to start taking off even more so than it is already as the economy deteriorates. So I find that very interesting. And part of the reason why I said this is something caught my attention this morning that and this one you actually want to scroll through. Something caught my attention this morning that got me thinking, and I'm probably just completely ignorant about this, but like we hear about tent cities, right? And we hear about the homelessness, and we hear about people living in their cars, and we hear about people living in their RVs. My question is, how many people are living in boats?
I saw
in this country. Did you see this about this fire? Think about this, right? 35 boats were destroyed. Most of them were houseboats. 2 people were killed. 7 people were taken to the hospital. 7 are missing. Yeah. How many people are living in boats as alternative housing? And why are they living in boats? You see what I'm saying? It's like these are not the signs of a booming economy. And it seems like the government. So what happens with this house fire? Well, now with these boat fires, now you're not going to be able to stay in a boat and keep it docked for more than 24 hours at a time. And it's got to move. I'm just giving out examples, right? But you can see the stage being set for, this is like, so what's going to be the government solution to this? It's going to be FEMA Camp USA, Mike. That's the solution.
Man, all great points. And the alternative living, I like how you live that. So I do happen to follow a lot of different channels that focus on that because I'm curious to educate myself once again. And it's interesting with the boat situation. I remember hearing some stories about that. And, of course, where are the boats located at? They're located off the coast of California and not probably really on the East Coast because it's cold on this region. But that's probably a West Coast issue for overinflated housing.
Well, this is in Alabama. This is in Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the stories I heard about was in California, in L.A., and all those regions because in L.A., for what I've read in the past, a lot of those people who purchase boats or rafts or whatever, they're docking in areas where the $1 million yachts are at rather. And so a lot of the higher income individuals are like, I have a $1 million yacht here and I have a $20 boat next to me. what's going on? Like, I don't pay taxes. I don't pay bolting fees. They're violating. So there's a lot of issues on the West Coast as well. So what does that tell us? It's becoming harder to live and to afford a quality life in this country due to the underlying workings of our monetary system. And it's only going to get possibly worse, depending on what you believe.
Yes, because there's only one solution, and that's going back to gold and silver. And we'll get to that solution eventually. The point is that we're going to have a lot of pain before we get to that solution.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and start dialing it back here today, Mike. There's a lot going on and a lot to keep up on. So it looks like there's a question there. Oh, that's that same question from earlier before. If we wanted to check into the chat one more time here.
Yeah, we can check into the chat. And so got some interviews coming up, a lot of things to get going. So we got to keep it moving. But it's always great to connect and see. And so here's one for Paul Green. It says, where's it at? Okay, there's two there. Low blood pressure. What would happen if New York City was locked down like Wuhan? Absolute pandemonium. That's a story you can't hide. Because they will have to shut down social media account. They will have to get into the internet to make sure they keep the, contagion from spreading social media wise. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on Chris Martinson's video in the first one, he's got two really good videos. We got them posted in one of I can't remember exactly which article it is from yesterday because it was like in a roundup that we did yesterday and published. But the city of Beijing, that's the capital of China. The city of Beijing is in lockdown with nothing going in or out of Beijing, right? Yeah. So, and these are places that are even bigger than New York. I can't remember the population in New York, but I know it's smaller than, or it used to be. I think it was like 7 or 8 million, but it's smaller than like Beijing and it's smaller than Wuhan. So, this is one of those things that there's no real easy solution to this, Yeah.
It's unfortunate. So, and Mr. Half Dollar, this is one of the issues I've had from day one. I remember telling you November, December, January the first year, we'll get a taste of what 2020 and what the new decade will eventually start like. And as of right now, we got crazy repo action. We ain't talk nothing about that because this is whatever. I stopped paying attention because it's going to be an ongoing quantitative easing process. So if they're going to continue to expand their balance sheet, eventually it's going to spill out into the main economy. So we know what's going to the trickle down effect. You're going to lose out on a lot of purchasing power. Oh, okay. And then we got Middle East. Then we got the impeachment. Then we got this Wuhan. Then we're going to have, we got 3 days left or give or take in this month. However, 27th or so we're this week. Expect something this week, Mr. Half Dollar.
Yes, exactly. And I can't remember who it was, but one of the senators or congressmen or someone was on the floor over the weekend, and they were like, if the CDC wants to declare a national emergency or a health emergency or something, that would unlock $35 million to use to fight the Wuhan coronavirus. And I'm thinking, $35 million, that's not going to do anything, So when you talk about this quantitative easing that we don't call quantitative easing, I think about all the money the government's about to start spending as well, right? So it's really going to be devaluing the currency here.
They about to increase the pressure of that spigot.
Yeah.
And therefore, everything comes with that. So, all right, so let's get ready to dial it back. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in and hung out with us this afternoon or soon to be afternoon. As always, if you guys enjoyed the back and forth, don't be afraid to donate a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the description if you're watching the replay. Be back Wednesday. Got some interviews in between, and definitely be blessed, be safe, stay prayed up. And for those that have lost their life due to all this activity, let's definitely keep their families and our other citizens around the world, because we're all a part of one big family on this planet. But the mainstream media would like to have us believe we're all enemies. But I have no ill will towards nobody. So definitely, I'm staying prayed up and praying for our leadership, because they're the ones making decisions on our behalf. So that's enough ranting for me. Mr. Havdal, any last thoughts, or you're ready to sign off with that one?
This is going to be a crazy week, Mike, because we got the FOMC on Wednesday. We got China market closed. We got a pandemic, just like the QE. It's the not pandemic, right? So, there's a lot of volatility to be looking for this week. So these metals could really get moving here. And I think they are going to start getting moving here. And it would not surprise me if we're talking about $20 silver come the end of the week. So we'll see. That's all I got. And I'm going to be looking forward to connecting with you again on Wednesday.
All right. Sounds good. So you're looking a little lag there. So with that being the case, be blessed, be safe. And I will see everybody later. Peace.